The bunker door groaned like a dying animal as Captain Marcus Stone tried to pull it shut one last time. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the impossible decision crushing down on his chest like a 1,000-pound weight. Behind him, in the dim, flickering light of the emergency lanterns, 75 pairs of eyes stared at him. 75 military dogs, German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Labrador Retrievers, and even a few mixed breeds, sat in perfect formation. Not one of them moved. Not one of them barked. They just watched. "Go home," Marcus screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. He pointed toward the exit tunnel, the only escape route left before the enemy arrived. "That's an order. Get out of here. Now!" Not a single dog moved. Thunder, the biggest German Shepherd and the lead dog of the entire unit, took one step forward instead. His dark eyes locked onto Marcus's face. Then, slowly, deliberately, Thunder sat down right in front of the bunker entrance, blocking it completely. One by one, every single dog did the same thing. They formed a wall of fur and muscle between Marcus and the exit. They weren't leaving. They were staying to protect the bunker, and Marcus knew that decision would change everything. Outside, the sound of enemy vehicles grew louder. Marcus had maybe 10 minutes before they arrived. 10 minutes before the most dangerous military secret in the world would be discovered. 10 minutes before everything his team had fought for would be destroyed. But the dogs refused to abandon their post. What made 75 highly trained military dogs defy a direct order from their commanding officer? What was hidden inside that bunker that was worth protecting with their lives? And why did Marcus Stone look at those loyal animals with tears streaming down his face? Before we dive into this incredible true story, drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching this from? We love hearing from viewers all around the world. Now, let me take you back to where this whole impossible situation began. The desert sun beat down on Camp Vanguard like an angry fist. It was the kind of heat that made your brain feel fuzzy and your water bottle feel like it was filled with warm soup instead of something refreshing. Marcus Stone stood in the center of the training yard, watching his team of Navy SEALs run drills with their K9 partners. Marcus wasn't just any SEAL. He was the handler coordinator for the entire dog program in this region. That meant he was responsible for 75 military working dogs and their handlers. It was the biggest K9 unit ever assembled in one place during active deployment. "Thunder, come," Marcus called out. A massive German Shepherd with a black and tan coat launched himself across the obstacle course. Thunder was 4 years old and already had more combat missions under his collar than some human soldiers would see in a lifetime. He was smart, fearless, and completely loyal to Marcus. Thunder skidded to a stop right at Marcus's feet and sat perfectly still, his tongue hanging out slightly, waiting for his next command or maybe a treat. Marcus smiled and scratched behind Thunder's ears. "Good boy. You're the best, buddy." Captain Stone. A young SEAL named Jake Henderson jogged up, slightly out of breath. Jake was 23 years old, fresh-faced, and still excited about everything in the military. He was the handler for a Belgian Malinois named Rocket, a smaller, faster dog who was incredibly good at sniffing out explosives. "What's up, Henderson?" Marcus asked. "Sir, we just got word from command. We've been assigned to a new mission. It's classified, like really classified. They want all 75 dogs and every handler ready to move out at 0600 hours tomorrow." Marcus raised an eyebrow. All 75 dogs? That was unusual. Normally they'd split up the teams for different operations. But keeping all the dogs together meant something big was happening. "Did they say what the mission is?" Marcus asked. Jake shook his head. "No, sir. Just that we're guarding something important. Something that could change the whole war if it falls into enemy hands." Marcus felt a cold feeling creep up his spine despite the desert heat. He'd been in the military for 15 years. He'd seen combat in 6 different countries. And he'd learned that whenever someone said something was really classified, it usually meant really dangerous too. "All right," Marcus said. "Get the word out to all handlers. Full gear check tonight. I want every dog examined by the vet. Make sure everyone gets a good meal and rest. If we're moving out tomorrow, I want this unit in perfect condition. Yes, sir. Jake saluted and ran off to spread the message. Marcus looked down at Thunder, who was still sitting patiently at his feet. Well, buddy, looks like we've got another adventure coming. You ready? Thunder's tail wagged once. A simple, confident gesture that said, I'm always ready. The briefing room was crowded and hot. 25 SEALs sat in folding chairs, each one a handler responsible for 1 to 3 military dogs. The dogs themselves were secured in a special kennel area nearby, resting up for whatever was coming. At the front of the room stood Colonel Patricia Reeves, a stern woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had the kind of face that looked like it rarely smiled, and right now she looked especially serious. Gentlemen, she began, her voice sharp and clear, what I'm about to tell you does not leave this room. This is a Level 5 classified operation, which means if you talk about it to anyone outside this room, even other military personnel, you will face court-martial and prison time. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. The SEALs responded in unison. Colonel Reeves clicked a remote, and a satellite image appeared on the screen behind her. It showed a desert location with what looked like a small building or structure barely visible in the sand. This, she said, pointing at the image, is Bunker 7. It's located approximately 60 miles northwest of here, deep in disputed territory. On the surface, it looks like an abandoned storage facility. But underground, it contains something that could shift the entire balance of power in this region, and potentially the world. Marcus leaned forward in his chair. The room had gone completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning struggling to cool the space. What's in the bunker, ma'am? Asked Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the most experienced handlers on the team. Colonel Reeves's jaw tightened. Advanced weapons technology. A prototype system that makes all current defense systems obsolete. If enemy forces capture it, they could reverse engineer it within months. We'd lose our technological advantage and thousands of lives would be at risk. She clicked to the next slide. This one showed a timeline. Intelligence indicates that enemy forces know about Bunker 7's location. We estimate we have approximately 2 weeks before they launch a major operation to capture it. Our mission is simple. Get to the bunker first. Secure it. Hold it until reinforcements arrive to extract the technology. 2 weeks. Jake asked, his voice slightly higher than normal. Ma'am, that's a long time to hold a position in enemy territory. Which is why you're bringing every dog we have, Colonel Reeves replied. Those dogs are our early warning system, our patrol units, and our best chance at detecting enemy approach before they're on top of us. Captain Stone will coordinate all K9 operations. The rest of you will work in shifts, some guarding, some resting, rotating every 8 hours. She looked around the room, making eye contact with each SEAL. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. The enemy will throw everything they have at that bunker once they realize we're there. But those weapons inside, they're worth protecting. They could save thousands of American lives in future conflicts. That's why we're doing this. Marcus raised his hand. Ma'am, if it's that important, why only send 25 SEALs? Why not a full battalion? Colonel Reeves smiled thinly, the first expression other than seriousness Marcus had seen on her face. Because a full battalion would be spotted immediately. Satellite surveillance, informants, all of it. The enemy would know we were coming and be waiting for us. A small unit of elite operatives moving fast with minimal equipment, that can slip through their detection. Plus, with 75 military dogs, you have sensory capabilities that no amount of human soldiers can match. That made sense. Dogs could smell enemies approaching from over a mile away depending on wind conditions. They could hear sounds humans would never detect. They could work in conditions that would exhaust human sentries. In many ways, those 75 dogs were worth hundreds of human soldiers when it came to defensive operations. You leave at 0600 hours, Colonel Reeves concluded. Get your teams ready. And gentlemen, come back alive. All of you, including those dogs. They're not just tools. They're soldiers too. Treat them that way. The convoy left before sunrise. 6 armored vehicles rolled through the desert, kicking up clouds of sand that glowed pink and orange in the early morning light. Inside each vehicle were handlers, their gear, and their canine partners. Marcus rode in the lead vehicle with Thunder sitting calmly beside him. The German Shepherd's head rested on Marcus's knee, and every few minutes Marcus would reach down and scratch behind his ears. "You nervous, Captain?" Jake asked from the driver's seat. Marcus thought about it. "Always am before a mission, but Thunder here keeps me calm. Don't you, buddy?" Thunder's tail thumped against the vehicle floor. The truth was, Marcus was more than nervous. He was worried. 75 dogs was a lot of responsibility. Each one was trained, intelligent, and valuable, not just as military assets but as living beings that trusted their handlers completely. These dogs didn't understand politics or war or advanced weapons technology. They just understood loyalty. They understood that their handler needed them, and they would do anything to help. As the convoy rolled deeper into enemy territory, Marcus couldn't shake a strange feeling in his gut. Something about this mission felt different. He'd been on dozens of operations before, but this one had a weight to it that he couldn't quite explain. The journey took 6 hours. They had to take indirect routes to avoid detection, moving through valleys and around known enemy patrol areas. Finally, just after noon, they arrived at Bunker 7. It didn't look like much from the outside, just a small concrete structure barely bigger than a shed, half buried in sand. But Marcus knew that underneath was an entire facility, carved deep into the rock and earth. "All right, everyone, let's move," Marcus called out as the vehicles stopped. Teams 1 and 2, establish a perimeter. Team 3, get the dogs organized for patrol rotations. Teams 4 and 5, start unloading supplies. "Let's move like we've done this 1,000 times. Because we have." The SEALs jumped into action with practiced efficiency. Within 20 minutes, they had a defensive perimeter established around the bunker. The dogs were organized into patrol groups, each one assigned to a specific sector. Thunder stayed with Marcus as they descended into the bunker itself. The interior was surprisingly large, a series of concrete corridors lit by dim emergency lights. The air smelled stale and slightly metallic. At the center of the bunker was a reinforced vault door with multiple locks and a digital keypad. "That's where the prototype is stored," said Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the second-in-command of the operation. She was a sharp tactical officer who specialized in defensive operations. Command sent the access codes ahead. "Only 3 people have them, you, me, and Colonel Reeves back at base." Marcus nodded. "Good. Let's keep it that way. The fewer people who can open that door, the better." For the next 3 hours, they worked to transform the bunker into a defendable position. They set up sleeping areas, organized supplies, established radio communication with base, and most importantly, coordinated the dog patrol schedule. By evening, everything was in place. Marcus stood outside the bunker entrance, watching the sun set over the desert. Around him, dogs patrolled in pairs with their handlers, their noses constantly working to scent the air for any sign of danger. Thunder sat beside him, alert and watchful. "We're going to be here for 2 weeks, Marcus said quietly to his dog. 2 weeks of holding this position. Think we can do it?" Thunder looked up at him with those intelligent dark eyes and gave a soft woof. Not loud enough to compromise their position, but clear enough to communicate confidence. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, I think so too." Everything changed on the 3rd day. Marcus was catching a few hours of sleep in one of the bunker's small restrooms when Thunder suddenly woke him with an insistent paw on his chest. The German Shepherd's ears were forward, his body tense, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to release. Marcus was instantly awake, a skill learned from years of combat experience. "What is it, boy?" Thunder moved to the door, his nose working the air coming from the corridor. Then he gave 3 short, quiet barks. The signal for enemy detected. Marcus grabbed his gear and rushed out into the main corridor. Other handlers were emerging from their rest areas, roused by their own dogs giving similar alerts. "Contact!" Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the radio. "North perimeter. Multiple dogs alerting. Something's out there." Marcus raced up the stairs to the surface with Thunder right beside him. The desert night was dark. No moon tonight, but his night vision goggles turned everything into shades of green. On the north side of the bunker, he found Jake and 5 other handlers with their dogs. All the dogs were focused on the same direction, their bodies rigid with attention. "How far out?" Marcus asked quietly. Jake checked his equipment. "Dogs started alerting about 2 minutes ago. Based on wind direction and their behavior, I'd estimate enemy forces are approximately 1 mile out and approaching." 1 mile. That gave them maybe 15 minutes before contact. "Wake everyone," Marcus ordered. "Full defensive positions. I want every dog on alert but quiet. No barking unless absolutely necessary. We don't want to give away our exact positions." The camp transformed in minutes. SEALs took up firing positions behind sandbags and portable barriers. The dogs spread out in a wide perimeter, their incredible senses forming an invisible early warning net that no enemy could cross without being detected. Marcus crouched behind cover with Thunder beside him, his rifle ready. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands were steady. This was what they'd trained for. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Through his night vision goggles, Marcus finally spotted them. Dark shapes moving across the desert. Enemy patrol. He counted 12 soldiers moving in a loose formation, heading directly toward the bunker. "Hold fire," Marcus whispered into his radio. "Let them get closer. We need to know if this is just a patrol or something bigger." The enemy soldiers moved closer. 800 yards. 600. 400. Thunder's body was coiled tight beside Marcus, ready to attack on command but holding position perfectly. This was the result of years of training. A dog who could override every natural instinct and wait for his handler's signal. At 300 yards, one of the enemy soldiers suddenly stopped. He seemed to be looking right at the bunker's position. "They've spotted us," Lieutenant Chun whispered over the radio. Then, as if someone had fired a starting pistol, everything exploded into action. The enemy soldiers opened fire, muzzle flashes lighting up the desert. But the SEALs were ready. Return fire came swift and precise, trained marksmen hitting targets in the darkness that the enemy never saw coming. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the enemy patrol was retreating, leaving behind 2 wounded soldiers who were quickly captured. Marcus approached the prisoners with Thunder walking beside him. The German shepherd's lips were pulled back slightly, showing teeth, his body language making it clear what would happen if either prisoner made a threatening move. "Search them," Marcus ordered. What they found made Marcus's blood run cold. Both prisoners had military-grade GPS devices with the bunker's exact coordinates already programmed in. They also had detailed maps showing approach routes and defensive positions the enemy shouldn't have known about because the SEALs had only established them 3 days ago. "They knew we were here," Lieutenant Chun said, her voice tight. "This wasn't a random patrol. They were specifically looking for us." Marcus nodded grimly. "Get on the radio to base. We need to inform Colonel Reeves. Our position is compromised. The enemy knows exactly where we are." As Jake moved to make the call, Marcus looked around at his team. 25 SEALs, 75 dogs, and somewhere out there in the darkness, an enemy force that now knew their location and would be planning a major assault. They'd been here 3 days. They had 11 more days to hold this position. The mood in the bunker was tense the next morning. Everyone knew what the previous night's encounter meant. They'd been discovered earlier than expected. The enemy wouldn't waste time. A major assault could come at any moment. Marcus called a meeting of all the handlers in the main corridor. "Here's the situation," he began, his voice calm but serious. "Command has confirmed that enemy forces are gathering approximately 20 miles north of here. Intelligence estimates they'll have a force of at least 200 soldiers ready to move on our position within 48 hours. There were murmurs around the room. 200 soldiers against 25 SEALs was terrible odds, even with the advantage of a defensive position. However, Marcus continued, "Command is working on extraction plans. They're going to try to get reinforcements to us before the enemy attacks. But we need to be realistic. They might not make it in time." Jake raised his hand. "Captain, what's the contingency plan if reinforcements don't arrive?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was the part he'd been dreading. If it becomes clear that we can't hold the position, Command has authorized us to destroy the prototype weapon inside the vault. We'll rig it with explosives, evacuate the bunker, and blow everything sky-high before the enemy can capture it. The room went silent. "What about the dogs?" asked Sergeant Rodriguez. "Sir, evacuating 25 soldiers is one thing, but evacuating 75 dogs? That's going to take time. Time we might not have if we're under heavy attack." Marcus felt that cold feeling in his gut again. He'd been avoiding thinking about this exact problem, but Rodriguez was right. Moving 75 dogs under combat conditions would be incredibly difficult. They'd need multiple vehicles, careful coordination, and most importantly, time. "We'll make it work," Marcus said firmly. "Every SEAL here is responsible for their assigned dogs. No one gets left behind. That's not how we operate." Thunder, who was sitting at Marcus's feet, seemed to sense his handler's stress. The big German shepherd leaned against Marcus's leg, offering silent support. But in his heart, Marcus was beginning to understand something terrible. If things went wrong, if the enemy attacked before reinforcements arrived, he might have to make an impossible choice. Save the soldiers or save the dogs. And military regulations were clear. In a crisis situation, human lives took priority over everything else, including the animals who served alongside them. Marcus pushed that thought away. It wouldn't come to that. Couldn't come to that. But deep down, he wasn't sure he believed it. 2 days later, day 6 of the operation, everything Marcus feared came true. Started just after midnight. Thunder woke Marcus with urgent pawing, and within seconds every dog in the bunker was alerting to danger. "Contact!" Multiple voices shouted over the radio simultaneously. Multiple contacts. All sides. Marcus grabbed his gear and raced to the surface. What he saw through his night vision goggles made his stomach drop. The enemy wasn't sending 200 soldiers. They were sending at least 500. Green figures moved across the desert in every direction: north, south, east, west. They were surrounding the bunker completely, cutting off all escape routes. This wasn't just an assault. This was an overwhelming force designed to crush them through sheer numbers. "Defensive positions!" Lieutenant Chun screamed. "Everyone up! Move! Move! Move!" The SEALs raced to their positions, but Marcus could see it in their faces. They all understood. This was bad. This was really, really bad. The first wave of enemy soldiers hit the perimeter 10 minutes later. Gunfire erupted from all directions, lighting up the desert night like a deadly fireworks show. The SEALs fought back with precise, disciplined fire, but they were massively outnumbered. The dogs proved their worth in those first desperate minutes. They detected enemy soldiers trying to sneak up on blind spots. They alerted to incoming grenades before humans could spot them. They worked as an integrated part of the defensive team, and their contribution saved lives. But even with the dogs' help, Marcus knew they couldn't hold. Not against these numbers. Not without reinforcements. "Command! This is Stone!" Marcus shouted into his radio over the sound of gunfire. "We need those reinforcements now. We're being overrun." The radio crackled. Colonel Reeves's voice came through, but it sounded strained. "Stone, reinforcements are 50 minutes out. You need to hold your position. 50 minutes. An eternity in combat." "Ma'am," respectfully, "I don't think we can hold that long." "You have to," Colonel Reeves shouted back. "That prototype cannot fall into enemy hands. If you can't hold, you're authorized to implement Contingency Protocol Delta. Do you understand?" "Protocol Delta, Captain." Marcus's blood turned to ice. Protocol Delta. That meant destroy the prototype, evacuate all human personnel immediately, and leave the dogs behind, because there wouldn't be time to evacuate both the soldiers and 75 military dogs. The evacuation helicopters could only carry so much weight, and protocol was clear: human lives first. "Marcus!" Lieutenant Chen's voice screamed across the chaos. "East perimeter is falling. We can't hold them." Marcus looked around at the battle raging in every direction. Then he looked down at Thunder, who was pressed against his leg, ready to fight. ready to protect, completely loyal and trusting that Marcus would keep him safe. And Marcus realized he had to make the choice he'd been dreading since this mission began. Save the soldiers, or save the dogs. He couldn't do both. Marcus Stone had made hundreds of decisions in combat. He'd decided when to advance and when to retreat. He'd decided which targets to engage and which to avoid. He'd decided who would take point on dangerous missions and who would provide cover fire. But he had never made a decision like this. "Captain!" Jake Henderson's voice cracked over the radio, filled with panic. "South perimeter just lost 2 men. We need to pull back into the bunker now." Marcus stood at the bunker entrance, watching the battle unfold around him in the green-tinted world of his night vision goggles. Explosions flashed white-hot. Tracer rounds streaked across the darkness like deadly fireflies. And everywhere, enemy soldiers kept coming. Thunder pressed against his leg, the German shepherd's body tense and ready. Around them, other dogs maintained their positions with their handlers, 75 pairs of eyes watching, waiting for commands from the humans they trusted completely. Lieutenant Chun appeared at Marcus's side, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "Captain, we've got maybe 20 minutes before they breach the inner perimeter. We need to make the call. Protocol Delta. Now. Protocol Delta. Destroy the prototype weapon. Evacuate all human personnel. Leave the dogs behind because there simply wasn't time or space to save them all." Marcus's hand moved to his radio. He could make the call right now. Order his men to rig the explosives, call in the evacuation helicopters, and get everyone, well, every human out alive. It was the logical choice. The military choice. The choice that followed regulations and prioritized human life above all else. But as Marcus looked down at Thunder, as he saw the absolute trust and loyalty in those dark eyes, something inside him rebelled. These dogs had served alongside them for years. They'd detected explosives that saved human lives. They'd tracked down enemy combatants. They'd provided comfort during the hardest moments of deployment. They weren't just tools or equipment. They were soldiers, partners, friends. "Captain," Lieutenant Chun pressed. "We're out of time." Marcus closed his eyes for just 1 second. When he opened them, his jaw was set with determination. "Negative," he said firmly. "We're not implementing Protocol Delta. Not yet." Chen's eyes widened. "Sir, with respect, if we wait too long." "I know the risks, Lieutenant. But I'm not leaving these dogs to die if there's any other option. Contact command again. Tell them we need evacuation capable of handling both personnel and animals. And tell them we need it in the next 15 minutes or we're going to have a serious problem." Chun hesitated for only a moment, then nodded and moved to the radio. Marcus knew he might be making a terrible mistake. He might be risking human lives to save dogs. But he also knew that if he left these animals behind, if he abandoned them after everything they'd given, he would never forgive himself. And neither would his men. "All handlers," Marcus shouted into his radio. "Pull back to inner defensive ring. Bring your dogs. We're holding this position until evacuation arrives for everyone." What followed were the longest 15 minutes of Marcus Stone's life. The SEALs pulled back into a tighter defensive circle around the bunker entrance, creating overlapping fields of fire. The dogs moved with them, perfectly disciplined even in the chaos of combat. Enemy soldiers pressed closer, emboldened by the defenders' retreat. Bullets ricocheted off concrete. Grenades exploded close enough to shower dirt and debris over the defensive positions. Jake Henderson crouched behind a barrier with Rocket, his Belgian Malinois, pressed against his side. The young SEAL's hands shook slightly as he reloaded his rifle, but Rocket remained calm, a steadying presence in the middle of madness. "It's okay, boy," Jake whispered to his dog, even though he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. "We're getting out of here, all of us, I promise." Rocket licked Jake's hand once, then returned his attention to watching for threats. Across the defensive perimeter, Sergeant Rodriguez worked with 3 dogs, Max, Shadow, and Luna, coordinating their sensory abilities to detect enemy movements before they happened. When Max's ears suddenly swiveled left, Rodriguez was ready. He spotted 3 enemy soldiers trying to flank the position and took them down with precise shots before they could get close. "Good boy, Max," Rodriguez praised quickly before returning to combat focus. Thunder stayed at Marcus's side, but the German Shepherd was doing more than just keeping close to his handler. Thunder had taken on a different role. He was watching the other dogs. Marcus noticed it during a brief lull in the fighting. Thunder would look at the other dogs in the defensive ring, making eye contact with each one. When a younger Labrador named Scout started showing signs of panic, Thunder moved over and touched noses with the younger dog, somehow calming him down. It was like Thunder understood that his job wasn't just to protect Marcus. It was to keep the entire pack stable during this crisis. "Captain," Lieutenant Chun called out. "Command says helicopters are 8 minutes out, but they're only sending 2 birds. They can't carry everyone in one trip." Marcus's heart sank. 2 helicopters meant they'd need to make choices about who went first and who stayed for a second trip, if there even was time for a second trip. But before he could respond, something happened that changed everything. An explosion, bigger than any before, erupted on the western side of the defensive perimeter. A rocket-propelled grenade had found its mark, destroying one of their key defensive positions and leaving a gap in their lines. "West side down," someone screamed. "They're coming through." Enemy soldiers poured through the gap like water through a broken dam. There were too many of them. Even with the SEALs' superior training and equipment, they couldn't stop them all. "Fall back to the bunker," Marcus ordered. "Everyone inside. Now!" The SEALs retreated in stages, providing covering fire for each other as they moved toward the bunker entrance. The dogs moved with them, some helping to drag wounded soldiers, others continuing to alert to enemy positions. Within 90 seconds, all 25 SEALs and 75 dogs were crammed into the bunker's main corridor. The heavy steel door slammed shut with a sound like thunder. Ironic, given Thunder's name, and Marcus through the internal locks. They were sealed inside. But that also meant they were trapped. "How long can that door hold?" Jake asked, his voice tight with fear. Marcus checked the door's reinforcement rating. "Against small arms fire? Indefinitely. Against explosives? Maybe 10 minutes if they really want in. And the helicopters? 5 minutes out." The math was simple and terrible. The enemy would breach the bunker before evacuation arrived. The bunker's main corridor was packed with people and animals. 25 SEALs stood ready with weapons pointing at the entrance, prepared for the moment when that door would be breached. 75 dogs sat in organized groups, panting from exertion but still maintaining discipline. But Marcus noticed something strange. The dogs were acting different. They weren't focused on the entrance where the enemy would come through. Instead, they kept looking deeper into the bunker, toward the vault where the prototype weapon was stored. Thunder's behavior was the most obvious. The big German Shepherd kept moving toward the vault corridor, then looking back at Marcus, then moving toward the vault again. It was the classic behavior of a dog trying to communicate something important to his handler. "What is it, boy?" Marcus asked quietly, moving to crouch beside Thunder. Thunder whined softly, a sound of frustration at not being able to make his human understand. Then he moved decisively toward the vault, clearly expecting Marcus to follow. "Captain, we don't have time for this," Lieutenant Chun said. "We need to rig the explosives and—" "Wait!" Marcus held up a hand. "Something's wrong. Thunder's trying to tell me something." He followed his dog down the corridor toward the vault. The other dogs immediately perked up, watching intently. Some of them started to follow. When Marcus reached the vault door, Thunder sat down directly in front of it and stared at his handler with intense focus. "The prototype?" Marcus asked. "Something about the weapon?" Thunder barked once. A clear yes, in the language they developed over years of working together. Marcus moved to the digital keypad and entered his access code. The vault door's locks disengaged with a series of mechanical clicks. He pulled the heavy door open, revealing the chamber beyond. The prototype weapon sat on a reinforced pedestal in the center of the small room. It looked like a silver metallic cylinder about the size of a large fire extinguisher, covered in complex circuitry and indicators. But something was wrong. The indicator lights that should have been dark were glowing red. The device was active. And according to the display panel, it was in some kind of countdown sequence. "Oh no," Marcus whispered. "Oh no, no, no." Lieutenant Chun appeared beside him. She took one look at the device and went pale. "Captain, is that thing armed?" Marcus quickly scanned the display panel. His blood turned to ice as he read the information. "It's not just armed," he said quietly. "Someone activated it remotely. This thing is set to detonate in." He checked the countdown timer. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. The implications hit everyone at once. The prototype weapon wasn't just a defensive technology. It was also an explosive device, designed to destroy itself if it fell into enemy hands. And someone at command, probably Colonel Reeves, had activated the self-destruct remotely when they realized the bunker was about to be overrun. "Can you deactivate it?" Chun asked desperately. Marcus examined the controls. "Not without the deactivation code. And I don't have it. Only Colonel Reeves has it. So call her. The radio equipment is by the main entrance. And even if I get through, we'd need to transmit the code, verify it, enter it. We don't have time." Jake Henderson had followed them to the vault. His face was white with fear. "Captain, what does this thing do when it explodes?" Marcus swallowed hard. "According to the briefing, it has a blast radius of approximately 1 mile. Everything within that radius is gone. Vaporized. 1 mile. The bunker was at ground zero. Everyone inside would die. And the enemy soldiers surrounding the bunker? They'd all die too." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of heavy impacts on the bunker's main door. The enemy was trying to breach it with explosives. "We need to evacuate now," Lieutenant Chun said. "Forget the dogs. Forget everything. We need to get that door open, fight our way to the surface, and run as fast as we can." She was right. It was the only logical choice. Open the door, create a corridor of fire to punch through the enemy forces, and sprint for the helicopters that were now. Marcus checked his watch, 3 minutes out. They might make it. Most of the humans might survive. But the dogs? There was no way to evacuate 75 dogs in the time they had left. The animals would slow them down, make them easier targets. And even if they somehow got all the dogs to the surface, the dogs couldn't run fast enough to escape the blast radius in 3 minutes. The dogs would die. Marcus made his decision in the space between heartbeats. "Everyone back to the main corridor," he ordered. "We're evacuating. Handlers, release your dogs. They'll move faster without leashes." "Sir." Jake looked confused. "Release them." "You heard me, Henderson. We're running for the surface and those helicopters. The dogs will follow us as far as they can." "But," Marcus's voice cracked slightly, "but we can't wait for them. We can't slow down for them. Every second counts." The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but he forced them out. The SEALs moved quickly back to the main corridor. Marcus could see the understanding dawning on their faces, understanding mixed with heartbreak. These men had worked with these dogs for months or years. They'd bonded with them, trusted them, loved them, and now they had to leave them behind to die. Jake Henderson knelt beside Rocket, his Belgian Malinois, and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. "I'm sorry, boy," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Rocket licked Jake's face, completely trusting, with no idea what was coming. Sergeant Rodriguez stood with Max, Shadow, and Luna, his 3 assigned dogs. He couldn't bring himself to look at them. "You're all good dogs," he said roughly. "The best." Around the corridor, 25 handlers said private goodbyes to their canine partners. Some cried openly. Others maintained military bearing but with tears streaming down their faces. Marcus knelt in front of Thunder. The big German shepherd sensed something was wrong. His ears were back, his body language uncertain. "Thunder," Marcus said, his voice breaking, "you've been the best partner I could ever ask for. You've saved my life more times than I can count. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I can't save you this time." Thunder whined softly and pressed his head against Marcus's chest. Marcus hugged his dog, maybe for the last time, and stood up. He couldn't let himself think about it anymore or he'd lose his nerve. "Open the door," he ordered. "On my mark, we fight our way to the surface and run for the helicopters. Don't look back. Don't slow down. Just run." Two SEALs moved to the door controls. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The bunker door exploded open. The SEALs surged forward, weapons firing in coordinated patterns, creating a corridor of destruction through the enemy forces. Marcus ran with them, his legs pumping, his heart pounding. Behind him, he could hear barking. The dogs were following, trying to keep up with their handlers. "Go home," Marcus screamed over his shoulder, even as he kept running. "Go home. That's an order." But the dogs didn't understand "go home" in this context. They only understood that their handlers were running, and where their handlers went, they followed. The SEALs fought through the enemy lines, taking casualties but pushing forward. The helicopters appeared overhead, searchlights cutting through the darkness. They were landing at an extraction point 200 yards from the bunker. Marcus checked his watch as he ran. 2 minutes until detonation. 2 minutes to cover 200 yards and get airborne. They might just make it. The SEALs reached the helicopters with 90 seconds to spare. The pilots were already spinning up the rotors, ready to lift off the instant everyone was aboard. "Get in! Get in!" Lieutenant Chun screamed, shoving soldiers toward the open doors. Marcus was one of the last to reach the helicopters. He turned to take one final look at the bunker, and his heart stopped. The dogs hadn't followed them all the way. Instead, 75 military working dogs had formed up in a perfect defensive perimeter around the bunker entrance. They sat in formation organized by size and breed, creating a living wall between the bunker and the enemy soldiers. Thunder sat at the front of the formation, his eyes locked on Marcus even from 200 yards away. "No!" Marcus screamed. "Thunder! Come! That's an order! Come here now!" Thunder didn't move. None of the dogs moved. Jake Henderson appeared at Marcus's side, staring in horror at Rocket sitting in formation with the others. "What are they doing? Why won't they come?" And then Marcus understood. The dogs weren't being disobedient. They weren't confused or scared. They were doing exactly what they'd been trained to do. They were guarding the bunker. All their lives, these dogs had been trained for one purpose: protect important assets, detect threats, guard positions, never abandon a post until ordered to by their handler. And in their minds, the bunker was their post. The prototype weapon inside, even though it was about to explode, was their responsibility. These dogs had been trained so thoroughly, so completely, that even in the face of death, they couldn't override their core programming. They were guarding the bunker because that was their job. "Captain, we have to go." Lieutenant Chun grabbed Marcus's arm. 60 seconds until detonation. "We need to be airborne now." But Marcus couldn't move. He stared at those 75 loyal dogs sitting in perfect formation, doing their duty, completely unaware that they were about to die. Thunder's eyes never left Marcus's face. Even from 200 yards away, Marcus could see the absolute trust in his dog's expression. Thunder believed Marcus would come back for him. He believed Marcus would never leave him. And Marcus was about to prove him wrong. "Captain!" Chun screamed, physically pulling him toward the helicopter. "We're out of time." Marcus let himself be pulled into the helicopter. The other SEALs were already aboard both birds, everyone except him and Chun. The pilots were shouting that they needed to lift off now. But as Marcus stood in the helicopter's doorway, watching Thunder and the other dogs maintaining their guard position, something inside him broke. He thought about all the times Thunder had saved his life. All the times these dogs had put themselves in danger to protect human soldiers. All the trust and loyalty they'd given freely, asking for nothing in return except food, water, and a scratch behind the ears. And he thought about what it would mean to fly away and leave them to die. What it would mean to live with that decision for the rest of his life. How he'd never be able to look at another military dog again without remembering the 75 he'd abandoned. The countdown timer in his head ticked down. 45 seconds. 40 seconds. Marcus Stone made his choice. He jumped out of the helicopter. "Captain!" Lieutenant Chun screamed. "What are you doing?" "Take off," Marcus shouted back. "That's an order. Get everyone to safety. We can't leave you. You have to. If I'm not going to evacuate without the dogs, then I'm not evacuating at all. Now go." For a moment, Lieutenant Chun just stared at him, her face a mask of shock and horror. Then slowly she nodded. She understood. As much as she disagreed with it, as much as it violated protocol and logic and common sense, she understood. "You're a good man, Marcus Stone," she said quietly. Then louder, "Lift OFF. Lift off now." The helicopters rose into the air, their rotors churning up massive clouds of dust. Marcus watched them climb, watched them bank away from the bunker, racing to get beyond the blast radius. Then he turned and ran back toward the bunker, toward the dogs, toward Thunder. He had 30 seconds. Marcus sprinted across the sand, his legs burning with effort. Enemy soldiers took shots at him, but he dodged and weaved, barely noticing the bullets zipping past. 25 seconds. Thunder saw him coming. The German shepherd stood up, his tail starting to wag in confused happiness. The other dogs noticed too, their attention shifting from guard duty to the approaching handler. 20 seconds. Marcus reached the formation of dogs. They surrounded him immediately, pressing close, licking his hands, whining with joy at his return. They didn't understand what was coming. They just knew their leader was back. 15 seconds. Marcus dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Thunder's neck. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I couldn't leave you either. We're a team, boy. Where you go, I go." Thunder licked his face, then pressed his head against Marcus's chest, the same gesture of comfort he'd given so many times before. 10 seconds. The other dogs gathered closer, forming a tight pack around Marcus. It was instinctive behavior. In times of danger, pack animals stayed together. They drew comfort from each other. 5 seconds. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about his family, his friends, his life. He thought about all the missions he'd completed, all the soldiers he'd saved, all the good he'd done in the world. But mostly, he thought about Thunder and the 74 other loyal dogs who'd given everything for the men and women they served. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. And then, the miracle. Marcus heard something impossible. A voice crackled through the radio still attached to his tactical vest. "Stone. The deactivation code. I'm transmitting the deactivation code." It was Colonel Reeves. Marcus's eyes snapped open. His hand fumbled for the radio. "Ma'am." "What?" "I overrode the self-destruct. The timers stopped. You have time. You crazy, beautiful idiot. You have time." Marcus couldn't process the words at first. Then he looked at his watch. The countdown should have reached 0. The explosion should have happened. But it hadn't. He scrambled to his feet and ran back into the bunker. Thunder and several other dogs followed him. He raced to the vault, barely noticing the enemy soldiers who had breached the outer defenses but hadn't yet reached the inner corridor. The prototype weapons display panel showed a new message. "Self-destruct sequence aborted. Device safe." Marcus sagged against the wall, his legs nearly giving out from relief. "Captain Stone." Colonel Reeves's voice came through the radio, and he could hear tears in it. "Lieutenant Chun told me what you did, that you stayed with the dogs. I've been in command for 20 years, and I have never seen such an act of courage and loyalty. You shamed me, Captain. You shamed me into remembering what really matters." "The enemy, ma'am," Marcus said, his voice hoarse. "They're still here. They're breaching the bunker. Not for long. We diverted an entire battalion to your position the moment Chun told me what happened. You've got 200 soldiers, air support and armor units arriving at your location in..." There was a pause. 90 seconds. "Hold your position, Captain. Help is coming." Marcus moved back to the main corridor where the SEALs, who should have been safely on helicopters flying away, were still fighting. They hadn't left. Not a single one of them. "You came back," Marcus said to Lieutenant Chun, who was directing fire at the enemy forces. She grinned fiercely. Did you really think we'd leave our commanding officer? Or those dogs? Not a chance, Captain. We're a team. All of us, humans and canines together. And as if to prove her point, the dogs had joined the defense. They weren't attacking, they'd never been trained for direct combat, but they were doing what they did best. Detecting threats, alerting to danger, providing early warning that kept the SEALs one step ahead of the enemy. Thunder stood beside Marcus, alert and ready, doing his job just like always. In the distance, Marcus could hear the sound of helicopters, many helicopters this time, and the rumble of armored vehicles approaching. Reinforcements had arrived. The battlefield fell silent as the sun rose over the desert. Marcus Stone stood outside the bunker, watching as the reinforcement battalion established a secure perimeter. 200 fresh soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, clearing out the remaining enemy forces and securing the area. Medical teams were already treating the wounded, both the SEALs who had fought through the night and even some of the captured enemy soldiers. But it was the dogs that drew the most attention. 75 military working dogs sat in organized groups, being examined by veterinary teams that had arrived with the reinforcements. Most of the dogs were exhausted but uninjured. A few had minor wounds, cuts from debris, soreness from the intense activity, but nothing serious. Thunder sat at Marcus's feet, finally allowing himself to relax now that the danger had passed. The big German shepherd's head rested on Marcus's boot, his eyes half-closed with exhaustion. Captain Stone. Marcus turned to find a tall man in an officer's uniform approaching. The insignia on his chest identified him as Major General William Crawford, the commanding officer of the entire regional military operation. Marcus snapped to attention and saluted. "Sir." General Crawford returned the salute, then did something unexpected. He extended his hand for a handshake. "At ease, Captain. I wanted to meet the man who chose to die with his dogs rather than abandon them." Marcus shook the general's hand, unsure what to say. "Sir, I made a choice that violated protocol. I endangered the mission and—" "You saved the mission," General Crawford interrupted firmly. "Captain, if you had evacuated and left those dogs behind, the enemy would have breached the bunker within 2 minutes. They would have found the prototype weapon before it detonated. With the self-destruct aborted, they could have captured it intact." Marcus blinked. I don't understand, sir." General Crawford gestured toward the bunker. "Let's walk. I'll explain." They walked slowly around the perimeter, Thunder following at Marcus's heel. The general spoke in a measured tone, like a teacher explaining a complex lesson. When Colonel Reeves aborted the self-destruct sequence, she took a massive gamble. She was betting that reinforcements would arrive before the enemy captured the weapon. But there was still a 4-minute window where the bunker was vulnerable. 4 minutes? Marcus asked. Yes, it took 4 minutes from when the self-destruct was aborted until our first units arrived on site. During those 4 minutes, if the enemy had breached the bunker and found the vault unguarded, they could have taken the prototype. The general paused and pointed toward the bunker entrance where several dogs still sat in their protective formation, even though the battle was over. But they didn't find it unguarded, did they? Because 75 military dogs maintained a defensive perimeter that delayed and confused the enemy forces. The enemy soldiers didn't know what to make of it. Were the dogs trained to attack? Were they booby-trapped? Were they guarding something important? Marcus felt a cold chill as he realized what the general was saying. "The dogs saved the mission," he whispered. "The dogs saved the mission," General Crawford confirmed. "And you saved the dogs, which means, Captain Stone, that your violation of protocol might be one of the most strategically sound decisions made in this entire operation." Marcus looked down at Thunder, who gazed back up at him with those trusting dark eyes. The German shepherd had no idea he was a hero. He just knew he'd done his job like always. "What happens now, sir?" Marcus asked quietly. General Crawford smiled, a genuine, warm expression. Now I have to decide whether to court-martial you for disobeying direct evacuation orders, or recommend you for a Medal of Honor for extraordinary valor and tactical brilliance. Marcus's heart stopped. "Sir, don't worry, Captain. I've already made my decision. But first, There's someone who wants to speak with you. The general pulled out a satellite phone and handed it to Marcus. It's Colonel Reeves. She's been waiting to talk to you. Marcus held the phone to his ear with trembling hands. Colonel Reeves. Marcus. Her voice was soft, so different from the sharp, commanding tone he was used to. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before this mission started. Ma'am. There was a long pause. Then Colonel Reeves spoke, and her words carried the weight of old pain. 20 years ago, I was a captain leading a special operations team. We had a mission similar to yours, protect an asset in hostile territory. We had 12 soldiers and 8 military dogs. When things went wrong and we had to evacuate, I followed protocol exactly. I ordered my team to leave the dogs behind. We got out. The dogs didn't. Marcus could hear the catch in her voice, even over the satellite connection. I've lived with that decision for 2 decades, Captain. I told myself it was the right call, the military call, the responsible call. But every single day, I think about those 8 dogs who trusted us, who served us, and who we abandoned to die. Ma'am, you were following orders. I was following protocol, Colonel Reeves interrupted. But protocol isn't the same as right. When Lieutenant Chun radioed and told me you jumped out of that helicopter to stay with your dogs, that you were choosing to die with them rather than leave them, something broke inside me. Or maybe something finally healed. She took a shaky breath before continuing. I realized I had a choice. I could let history repeat itself, or I could do something different. I could override the self-destruct, take the risk, and give those dogs and you a chance to survive. So that's what I did. Marcus felt tears pricking at his eyes. You risked your entire career, ma'am. My career. Colonel Reeves laughed, but it was a sound filled with emotion rather than humor. Marcus, my career isn't worth the life of a single one of those dogs. And it certainly isn't worth the life of a commanding officer who understands what loyalty really means. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. Thank you for giving us that chance. No, Captain. Thank you. Thank you for reminding an old soldier what we're really fighting for. It's not just about weapons and territory and strategic advantages. It's about the bonds we form with those who serve beside us, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. There was a pause. Then her voice became more formal again. Captain Stone, you'll be receiving new orders within the week. The entire K-9 program is being restructured based on what happened at Bunker 7. And I'm recommending you to head up the new initiative. What initiative, ma'am? Operation Faithful Guardian. A program that ensures no military working dog is ever left behind in combat situations. We're developing new evacuation protocols, better equipment, enhanced training. Everything needed to guarantee that these animals who give us everything get the protection they deserve. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. That's incredible, ma'am. It's overdue, Colonel Reeves replied. Now get some rest, Captain. You and your team, all of them, including the ones with 4 legs, have earned it. The call ended. Marcus handed the phone back to General Crawford, who was watching him with an understanding expression. She's a good officer, the general said. One who learned from her mistakes and chose to do better. That's all any of us can hope for. As the day progressed, the extraction of personnel and equipment from Bunker 7 began. But there was one more event that needed to happen first. Marcus gathered all 25 handlers together in a clearing near the bunker. The 75 dogs sat in front of them, organized by handler assignment. Every soldier, every animal, exhausted but alive. I need to say something, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the assembled group. What happened here, what we all went through, it changed something, not just in this mission, but in how we think about our canine partners. He looked at each handler in turn, Jake with Rocket, Rodriguez with Max, Shadow, and Luna, and all the others. These dogs didn't have to stay. When we ran for the helicopters, they could have followed us. But they chose to guard the bunker because that's what they were trained to do. They chose duty over survival. They chose loyalty over life. Jake Henderson raised his hand slightly. Captain, can I say something? Go ahead, Henderson. The young SEAL stepped forward, Rocket at his side. Sir, when you jumped out of that helicopter, when you ran back to stay with the dogs, I've never seen anything like that. Most officers talk about how valuable the dogs are, how they're important assets. But you showed us they're more than assets. They're family. There were nods and murmurs of agreement from the other handlers. Rodriguez spoke up next. My 3 dogs, Max, Shadow, and Luna, they've saved my life more times than I can count. And when I saw them sitting in that defensive formation, knowing they were about to die, it broke my heart. But then you came back, Captain. You showed us what real leadership looks like. Marcus felt his emotions threatening to overwhelm him, but he pushed forward. Here's what's going to happen. Every one of you is getting a commendation for valor. Every single dog is being officially recognized as having saved this mission. And more importantly, we're making sure this never happens again. He explained Operation Faithful Guardian, the new protocols, the enhanced evacuation procedures, the commitment to never leave a military working dog behind. When he finished, the handlers began to applaud. Started slow, just a few claps, then built into a roar of approval. Even some of the regular soldiers from the reinforcement battalion joined in. The dogs, sensing the positive emotion, began to wag their tails. A few barked happily. Thunder stood up and pressed against Marcus's leg, his tail wagging so hard his entire back end wiggled. Marcus knelt down and wrapped his arms around his partner. We did it, boy. We all made it home. Thunder licked his face, then did something he rarely did. He barked. Not an alert bark or a warning bark, but a joyful, celebratory bark that seemed to say, yes, we made it. We're all together. And one by one, all 75 dogs joined in. The desert filled with the sound of barking. A canine chorus of victory and survival and unbreakable loyalty. Marcus sat in a conference room back at base camp, facing a panel of senior military officers. General Crawford was there, as was Colonel Reeves via video link, and several other high-ranking officials. This was the formal debriefing, the moment when Marcus would have to answer for his decisions during the mission. Captain Stone, began Admiral Patricia Morrison, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. Let's be clear about what happened. You were given a direct order to implement Protocol Delta. You were authorized to destroy the asset and evacuate all human personnel. Instead, you attempted to evacuate both humans and animals, which delayed the extraction. Then, when that proved impossible, you abandoned the evacuation entirely and stayed at the bunker. Is that accurate? Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied calmly. And you understand that by not following Protocol Delta, you risked the prototype weapon falling into enemy hands? Yes, ma'am. Though in hindsight, the weapon was never at risk because Colonel Reeves aborted the self-destruct and reinforcements arrived in time. Admiral Morrison's eyes narrowed. But you didn't know that would happen when you made your decision. No, ma'am, I didn't. So you gambled with a critical military asset based on what? Emotion? Attachment to animals? The room went silent. This was the crucial moment. Marcus could feel everyone watching him, waiting to see how he'd defend his actions. Marcus stood up straighter. Ma'am, with respect, I made a tactical decision based on the information available. I had 75 military working dogs who had served this country faithfully. Dogs who had saved human lives repeatedly. Dogs who were, in that moment, providing defensive capabilities that no human soldier could match. He pulled out a tablet and brought up a video. This is footage from our helmet cams during the final assault. If you watch carefully, you'll see that the dogs' early warning alerts prevented at least 12 casualties. Their presence confused and delayed enemy forces at critical moments. And their defensive formation around the bunker entrance bought us the 4 minutes we needed for reinforcements to arrive. The panel watched the footage in silence. Marcus continued, I didn't choose dogs over the mission, ma'am. I chose to trust that dogs could help complete the mission. And I was right. Admiral Morrison studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Captain Stone, I've read the full after-action reports. I've reviewed all the footage. I've consulted with tactical experts. And do you know what conclusion I've reached? No, ma'am. That you made the right call. Not just morally, though I'll admit your loyalty to those animals is commendable, but tactically. Your decision to stay, to keep the dogs in place, to maintain that defensive position until reinforcements arrived. It was strategically sound. She looked around the table at the other officers. The military has spent decades training these dogs, investing millions of dollars in their development, treating them as valuable assets. But we've failed to recognize them as the soldiers they truly are. Captain Stone saw what we missed, that those dogs weren't just tools to be used and discarded. They were team members who deserved the same loyalty they've always shown us. General Crawford spoke up. The recommendation stands. Captain Stone receives a commendation for valor and tactical excellence. And Operation Faithful Guardian moves forward with full support from this command. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. Thank you, sir. Thank you all. As the panel dismissed, Colonel Reeves's image on the video screen spoke up. Captain Stone, one more thing. Yes, ma'am? Thunder and the other dogs. They're gonna need some recovery time. Probably a few weeks of rest and rehabilitation. I'm authorizing you to take leave to personally oversee their care. All 75 of them. Marcus smiled. That would be my honor, ma'am. The next 3 weeks were unlike anything Marcus had experienced in his military career. A special rehabilitation facility was set up specifically for the dogs from Bunker 7. It had veterinary staff, training areas, comfortable kennels, and most importantly, plenty of time for the animals to rest and recover from their ordeal. Marcus spent every day at the facility, working with each dog and their handler. They did gentle training exercises to maintain skills. They played games to rebuild confidence. They simply spent time together, reinforcing the bonds that had been tested so severely. Thunder was Marcus's constant companion during this time. The big German Shepherd seemed to understand that something important had happened, that the relationship between humans and dogs in this unit had fundamentally changed. One afternoon, Marcus sat in a large outdoor pen with Thunder and about 20 other dogs. They were all off duty, just relaxing in the sunshine. Some dogs dozed. Others played gentle games with each other. Thunder lay with his head in Marcus's lap, content and peaceful. Jake Henderson walked over with Rocket. The young SEAL looked different now, older somehow, more mature. The battle at Bunker 7 had changed all of them. Mind if we join you, Captain? Jake asked. Not at all. Have a seat. Jake sat down, and Rocket immediately went to greet Thunder with the playful nose touches that dogs used to say hello to friends. Then Rocket flopped down next to Thunder, and the two dogs rested together. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, Jake said quietly. About the choice you made. About what it means. Yeah. When I signed up to be a handler, I thought it was just about having a dog that could help me do my job better. Like having a really advanced piece of equipment. But Rocket isn't equipment. He's my partner, my friend. And when I thought I was going to lose him, when I thought we were leaving him to die, Jake's voice cracked slightly. It felt like losing part of myself. Marcus nodded slowly. That's what most people don't understand about the bond between handlers and their dogs. It's not like owning a pet. It's not even like having a working partner. It's deeper than that. These dogs trust us with everything. Their safety, their lives, their whole world. And we owe them the same trust in return. Is that why you stayed? Because of trust. Marcus thought about it. I stayed because leaving felt wrong. Not just morally wrong, but fundamentally wrong. Like I'd be breaking something that could never be fixed. Thunder has saved my life. He's been loyal to me when things were hard. How could I not be loyal to him when he needed me? Rocket rolled over, asking for a belly rub. Jake obliged, scratching the Belgian Malinois' stomach while Rocket's back leg kicked with pleasure. The new protocols that are being developed, Jake said. Operation Faithful Guardian. Do you really think they'll make a difference? I know they will, Marcus replied with conviction. Because they're based on a simple principle: military working dogs are soldiers, not equipment. And we don't leave soldiers behind. For weeks after the Battle of Bunker 7, a special ceremony was held at the main military base. A stage had been erected in the central parade ground. Hundreds of soldiers stood in formation, News media had been invited. This was a story the military wanted to share with the world. But the real stars of the ceremony were the 75 dogs, each sitting next to their handler in perfect formation at the front of the assembly. General Crawford stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to honor a group of soldiers whose bravery, loyalty, and dedication represent the very best of military service. These soldiers detected threats that saved human lives. They maintained defensive positions under impossible circumstances. They chose duty over safety, mission over survival." He paused for effect. "These soldiers are the 75 military working dogs of Operation Silent Guardian, and their handlers from SEAL Team K-9 Alpha." The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. General Crawford continued, "Today, we are instituting a new tradition. For the first time in military history, we are awarding service medals specifically designed for military working dogs. Each of these animals will receive the Canine Medal of Valor, the highest honor that can be bestowed upon a non-human service member." One by one, the dogs and their handlers were called forward. Each dog received a special medal designed to attach to their collar or tactical vest. The medals were inscribed with the dog's name, the date of the Battle of Bunker 7, and the words, "Loyalty, Courage, Service." When Thunder's name was called, Marcus walked forward with his partner. General Crawford personally placed the medal on Thunder's collar. "This German Shepherd," the general announced, "served as the lead dog during Operation Silent Guardian. His actions directly saved human lives and preserved critical military assets. Thunder represents everything we strive for in military service: bravery, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty." Thunder sat perfectly still as the medal was attached, though his tail wagged slightly when General Crawford scratched behind his ears. But the ceremony wasn't over. "Captain Marcus Stone," General Crawford said, his voice taking on a more formal tone, "step forward." Marcus moved to stand at attention. "For extraordinary valor in combat, for tactical excellence under impossible circumstances, and for demonstrating the true meaning of loyalty and leadership, you are hereby awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Additionally, you are promoted to the rank of Major and appointed as the Director of Operation Faithful Guardian." Marcus's eyes widened in shock. Major? The Distinguished Service Cross was one of the highest military honors possible. General Crawford pinned the medal to Marcus's uniform, then stepped back and saluted. Marcus returned the salute, his heart pounding. But the biggest surprise came next. Colonel Reeves, who had flown in specifically for this ceremony, approached the microphone. "Major Stone, there's one more honor I'd like to bestow, though it's not an official military decoration." She held up a small certificate. "Thunder, the German Shepherd you've worked with for 4 years, is scheduled to retire from active service in 6 months due to age regulations. Normally, retired military working dogs are adopted out through a formal application process. However, in recognition of your service and the extraordinary bond between you and Thunder, I'm exercising my authority to pre-approve his adoption. When Thunder retires, he's yours. Forever." Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes. He looked down at Thunder, who gazed back up at him with complete trust and love. "Thank you, ma'am," Marcus managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "That means everything." The ceremony concluded with a final surprise. All 75 dogs were brought to the front of the stage together with their handlers. The military band began to play, and on command, every single dog sat at attention. It was a display of discipline, training, and partnership that took the audience's breath away. But more than that, it was a statement. These weren't just animals. They were soldiers, heroes, and they deserved to be recognized as such. That evening, after the ceremony, Marcus was called to a private meeting with General Crawford and several intelligence officers he didn't recognize. "Major Stone," General Crawford began, his tone serious, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. It cannot leave this room." Marcus straightened. "Yes, sir." One of the intelligence officers, a thin man with glasses named Agent Harrison, pulled up a presentation on a secure tablet. "Major, do you remember the enemy forces at Bunker 7? How they knew your exact location and defensive positions. Yes, sir. We suspected there was a leak somewhere in the intelligence chain. There was. We've since identified and arrested the mole, a civilian contractor who was selling information to enemy operatives. But in the process of investigating, we discovered something else. Agent Harrison pulled up a series of documents. The enemy didn't just want the prototype weapon. They wanted to test something. Test what? Marcus asked, a cold feeling creeping up his spine. A new weapons system designed specifically to counter military working dogs. They've been developing sonic weapons that would incapacitate K-9 units, rendering them useless in combat. Bunker 7 was supposed to be their field test. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They were going to use it on our dogs? They tried, Agent Harrison replied. According to interrogations of captured enemy soldiers, they deployed the sonic weapon during the battle. They expected the dogs to become disoriented, panicked, and useless. But something unexpected happened. He pulled up more data. The dogs were affected initially. We have audio recordings that show the weapon was activated. But instead of panicking individually, the dogs grouped together. They formed those tight defensive formations, using pack behavior to mitigate the effects of the weapon. And their handlers, responding to their dog's distress, moved to protect them. The combination of pack behavior and human intervention rendered the weapon largely ineffective. General Crawford leaned forward. In other words, Major, the bond between handlers and dogs, the exact bond you demonstrated at its strongest, is what defeated their new technology. Your decision to stay with the dogs, to maintain that connection, wasn't just emotionally significant. It was tactically crucial. Marcus processed this information slowly. So when Thunder and the other dogs stayed to guard the bunker, they were fighting through the effects of a weapon designed to break them, Agent Harrison confirmed. And they succeeded because they had each other, and because they knew their handlers would come back for them. You came back, Major, and that made all the difference. As Marcus left the briefing, his mind reeling from these revelations, his secure phone buzzed with a message from Colonel Reeves. It was brief but ominous. Major Stone, new intelligence just received. Enemy has begun mass production of anti-K-9 weapons. They're planning to deploy them across 3 combat zones within 30 days. We need Operation Faithful Guardian operational immediately, and we need you to stop them. Full briefing tomorrow 0600. This is bigger than Bunker 7. Much bigger. Reeves. Marcus looked down at Thunder, who sensed his handler's sudden tension and pressed against his leg. Looks like we've got another mission coming, boy, Marcus said quietly. And this time, it's not just about 1 bunker or 75 dogs. It's about every military working dog in active service. Thunder looked up at him with those trusting dark eyes and gave a soft woof. His way of saying, whatever it is, we'll face it together. But as Marcus walked back to his quarters, he couldn't shake a troubling question. If the enemy was mass-producing weapons designed specifically to target military working dogs, how many other units were about to face the same impossible choice he'd faced at Bunker 7? And more importantly, would other commanding officers make the same choice he had? Or would dogs across combat zones be abandoned to save human lives? The Battle of Bunker 7 had been won. But the war for the future of military working dogs had just begun. Marcus Stone barely slept that night. His mind kept racing through the implications of Colonel Reeves's message. 3 combat zones. 30 days. Hundreds, maybe thousands of military working dogs at risk. At 0600 hours sharp, he arrived at the secure briefing room with Thunder at his side. The German Shepherd sensed his handler's tension and stayed close, providing silent support. Inside, he found not just Colonel Reeves, but an assembly of high-ranking officers from multiple branches of the military. General Crawford was there, Admiral Morrison, and several faces Marcus didn't recognize, intelligence specialists, tactical coordinators, and what looked like scientists in civilian clothes. Major Stone, thank you for coming, Colonel Reeves began. What you're about to hear represents the most significant threat to military working dog operations in the history of modern warfare. She dimmed the lights and brought up a presentation on the large screen at the front of the room. 3 weeks ago, Our intelligence agencies intercepted communications from enemy forces. They've developed what they're calling the canine disruptor, a sonic weapon system specifically engineered to incapacitate military working dogs. Images appeared on the screen showing technical schematics of devices that looked like modified speakers mounted on vehicles and drones. The technology works by emitting frequencies that are extremely painful to canine hearing but largely undetectable to humans. Dogs exposed to it experience disorientation, panic, and in some cases, permanent hearing damage. Field tests, conducted on captured military dogs, showed a 97% effectiveness rate. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. They'd tested it on captured dogs? That was beyond cruel. It was a war crime. One of the scientists, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chin, stood up to speak. The enemy believes they've found a way to neutralize one of our most effective defensive assets. Military working dogs detect explosives, track enemy movements, and provide early warning that saves lives. If these canine disruptors are deployed successfully, we lose all of that capability. How many have they built? Marcus asked, his voice tight. Intelligence suggests they've manufactured approximately 200 units, Admiral Morrison replied. And they're planning to deploy them in 3 key combat zones where our K9 units are most active. Zone Alpha, the northern border region. Zone Bravo, the coastal defensive sector. And Zone Charlie, the mountain territories where your team operated at Bunker 7. General Crawford pointed to a map on the screen. Each zone has between 30 and 50 military working dogs currently in operation. If the canine disruptors are deployed, those dogs become liabilities instead of assets. Handlers would be forced to evacuate their dogs or risk them being permanently injured. Or worse, Colonel Reeves added quietly. In the chaos of evacuation, many dogs would be left behind. Just like I left dogs behind 20 years ago. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Marcus spoke, his voice clear and determined. What's the mission? What do you need me to do? Colonel Reeves smiled slightly, an expression of pride mixed with concern. We need you to do what you do best, Major. We need you to protect the dogs. Operation Faithful Guardian is being fast-tracked for immediate deployment. Your mission has 3 objectives. She clicked to the next slide, which showed 3 tasks. Objective 1. Deploy countermeasures to protect K9 units in all 3 zones within 20 days. Objective 2. Locate and destroy enemy K9 disruptor production facilities. Objective 3. Train handlers across all combat zones in new protective protocols. 20 days, Marcus asked. That's 10 days faster than your original message said. New intelligence. One of the unfamiliar officers spoke up. He introduced himself as Commander James Rodriguez from Naval Intelligence. We've learned the enemy is accelerating their timeline. They plan to deploy the disruptors in 22 days, not 30. We need to beat them to the punch. Marcus looked down at Thunder, who was sitting calmly at his feet despite the tense atmosphere. The German shepherd looked back up at him with complete trust. I'll need resources, Marcus said. Personnel, equipment, transport. And I'll need the best handlers from every unit. You'll have everything you need, General Crawford confirmed. This is now a Priority 1 operation. You'll have access to whatever resources are necessary. There's one more thing, Dr. Chun said, standing up again. We've been developing a countermeasure to the canine disruptor. It's a specialized ear protection device for military working dogs. Think of it like noise-canceling headphones, but designed for canine anatomy. She pulled up images of what looked like padded ear covers with electronic components built in. The devices filter out the harmful frequencies while still allowing the dogs to hear normal sounds. But they need to be fitted individually to each dog, and handlers need to be trained on how to use them properly. That's part of your 3rd objective, Major. Marcus studied the images carefully. How effective are they? Lab tests show 95% protection, Dr. Chun replied. But we haven't field tested them in actual combat conditions yet. You'll be conducting those tests as part of the operation. So we're protecting the dogs with unproven technology while simultaneously hunting down enemy weapons facilities, Marcus summarized. And we have 20 days to do it all. 20 days, Colonel Reeves confirmed. I won't lie to you, Major. This is possibly the most complex and dangerous mission you've ever faced. But if anyone can pull it off, it's you and your team. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus assembled his team for Operation Faithful Guardian. Jake Henderson was the first person he called. The young SEAL had proven himself at Bunker 7, and his bond with Rocket was as strong as Marcus's bond with Thunder. I'm in, sir, Jake said immediately when Marcus explained the mission. Rocket and we're ready for whatever you need. Sergeant Rodriguez joined next, bringing his 3 dogs, Max, Shadow, and Luna. Those dogs at Bunker 7 became family, Rodriguez said simply. I'm not letting some enemy weapon hurt other families. Marcus recruited handlers from across the military branches. Lieutenant Sarah Chun from the Navy, Staff Sergeant Michael Torres from the Army, Captain Jennifer Walsh from the Air Force. Each one brought their canine partners and years of experience. In total, Marcus assembled a team of 50 handlers and their 50 dogs, 1/3 of all the dogs that needed protection across the 3 combat zones. But these 50 would be the first to receive the new protective equipment and training. They would be the test cases, the proof of concept. If Operation Faithful Guardian worked for them, it could be rolled out to every military working dog in active service. The team gathered at a secure training facility in a remote location. It was a sprawling complex with obstacle courses, tactical training areas, and specialized veterinary facilities. On the first day, Marcus stood before his assembled team. 50 handlers, 50 dogs, all of them looking at him with varying degrees of curiosity, determination, and nervousness. Thunder sat at his feet, as always. Everyone here knows what happened at Bunker 7, Marcus began. You know about the choice we faced, evacuate without the dogs or stay and risk everything. We chose to stay. And because we stayed, we discovered something important. He gestured to the dogs sitting in formation before them. These animals aren't just assets. They aren't tools or equipment. They're soldiers, they're partners, they're family. And the enemy has developed a weapon specifically designed to hurt them, to take away their abilities, to force us to abandon them. Marcus's voice grew harder, more intense. We're not going to let that happen. Over the next 18 days, because we've already used 2 days assembling this team, we're going to train harder than you've ever trained before. We're going to learn how to protect our dogs using new technology. We're going to deploy to 3 combat zones. And we're going to hunt down and destroy every single canine disruptor the enemy has built. He paused, looking each handler in the eye. This won't be easy. It will be dangerous. Some of us might not make it back. But we're going to do it anyway, because these dogs deserve our loyalty just as much as they've given us theirs. Are you with me? The response was immediate and unanimous. Yes, sir. Even some of the dogs barked in response, caught up in the energy of the moment. Thunder stood up and barked once. A clear, confident sound that seemed to say, let's do this. The training was intense, brutal, and exhausting. Dr. Chun and her team spent the first 3 days fitting each dog with their protective ear devices. The process required patience and care. The devices had to fit perfectly or they wouldn't work properly. Thunder was one of the first dogs fitted. He was patient as Dr. Chun adjusted the padded ear covers, though his expression clearly said he wasn't thrilled about wearing them. I know, buddy, Marcus said, scratching behind Thunder's ears, or trying to, given the ear protection. They're uncomfortable, but they're going to keep you safe. Once fitted, the dogs had to learn to work while wearing the devices. Some adapted quickly. Others struggled initially, confused by the slightly different way sounds reached their ears through the protective filters. Jake worked patiently with Rocket, the Belgian Malinois taking several days to adjust to the new equipment. Come on, boy, Jake encouraged. You can do this. Just trust me. Slowly, Rocket began to adjust. Within a week, he was performing all his usual tasks. Detecting explosives, tracking scents, alerting to threats, while wearing the protective gear. The handlers also trained on new tactical protocols. They learned how to recognize the signs of a canine disruptor being activated. They practiced emergency procedures for protecting dogs under sonic attack. They rehearsed coordinated movements that would allow handlers and dogs to work as integrated units even in hostile conditions. But the most important training was something harder to teach: trust. The protective gear will only work if your dog trusts you enough to wear it, Marcus explained during one training session. If they panic and try to pull it off, they're vulnerable. You need to build that trust so deeply that your dog will keep the protection on no matter what's happening around them. This meant hours of bonding exercises. Handlers spent extra time with their dogs, reinforcing their relationships, building confidence, creating the kind of unshakable trust that had saved everyone at Bunker 7. On day 10 of training, they conducted their first field test. Dr. Chen's team had built a prototype canine disruptor based on captured enemy schematics. It was set up at one end of a large training field. The dogs, wearing their protective gear, would be exposed to it under controlled conditions. Remember, Dr. Chen warned, if any dog shows signs of distress, we shut down immediately. We're not going to hurt these animals to test our equipment. Marcus volunteered Thunder to go first. You ready, boy? He asked his German shepherd. Thunder, wearing his ear protection, looked up at Marcus with complete trust. His tail wagged once. They walked into the testing field. Dr. Chun activated the canine disruptor. Marcus couldn't hear anything. The frequency was outside human hearing range. But he watched Thunder carefully for any sign of pain or distress. Thunder's ears twitched slightly inside the protective gear. His head tilted, showing he could detect something unusual. But he didn't panic. He didn't try to flee. He stayed calm, focused on Marcus, trusting that his handler would keep him safe. After 30 seconds, Dr. Chun shut down the device. How is he? She called out. Marcus knelt down and removed Thunder's ear protection, checking the German shepherd carefully. Thunder's ears looked fine. His behavior was normal. He showed no signs of pain or trauma. He's perfect, Marcus reported. The protection worked. Over the next 3 days, every dog went through the same test. Some showed more reaction than others, but none experienced the pain and panic that unprotected dogs had suffered. The protective gear was working. By day 15, the team was ready for deployment. Zone Alpha was the northern border region, a harsh, mountainous territory where enemy forces frequently launched attacks. 15 military working dogs were stationed there with their handlers, and intelligence suggested that's where the enemy would deploy their canine disruptors first. Marcus split his team into 3 groups. He would lead the first group to Zone Alpha. Jake Henderson would lead the second group to Zone Bravo. Lieutenant Chun would lead the third group to Zone Charlie. Remember the objectives, Marcus told his team leaders before they deployed. Protect the dogs first. Everything else is secondary. If we can locate and destroy the disruptor facilities, that's a bonus. But our primary mission is to keep every single military working dog safe. Marcus's group, 20 handlers and 20 dogs, including Thunder, arrived at Zone Alpha on day 16. The base commander, Colonel David Martinez, met them at the helicopter landing pad. He was a grizzled veteran in his 50s with a skeptical expression. Major Stone, he said, shaking Marcus's hand. I've read the reports from Bunker 7. Impressive stuff, but I'm not sure why we need special protection for our dogs. They've been operating fine in this zone for months. Marcus chose his words carefully. Colonel, with respect, that's because the enemy hasn't deployed their new weapons yet. But intelligence says they will, and soon. We're here to make sure your dogs are protected when that happens. Colonel Martinez looked unconvinced but gestured toward the base. All right, Major. You've got command authority from General Crawford, so I'll cooperate. But my men and dogs have missions to run. We can't stop operations for training exercises. We're not asking you to stop operations, Marcus replied. We're asking you to let us integrate with your operations. We'll work alongside your teams, provide the protective equipment, and train your handlers on the new protocols. Your missions continue as normal. Over the next 2 days, Marcus's team worked tirelessly to fit all 15 Zone Alpha dogs with protective gear and train their handlers. Some of the handlers were resistant at first. My dog doesn't need some fancy equipment, one sergeant grumbled. We've been fine without it. But Marcus was patient. "I understand your concern, Sergeant. But have you ever heard your dog react in pain to something you couldn't hear? Have you seen them suddenly become disoriented for no apparent reason?" The sergeant hesitated. "Well, yeah, actually, about 2 weeks ago during a patrol, my dog suddenly started whining and couldn't focus. I thought maybe he was sick. That was probably a test of the canine disruptor," Marcus explained. "The enemy was checking if their weapon worked in this zone. Your dog was hurt, and you didn't even know it because you couldn't hear the weapon." The sergeant's resistance crumbled. "Give me that protective gear. I'm not letting my dog get hurt again." On day 18, just 4 days before the enemy's planned deployment, everything changed. Marcus was conducting a routine patrol with Thunder and 3 other handler teams when Thunder suddenly alerted. The German Shepherd's body went rigid, his nose working the air, his ears swiveling inside his protective gear. "Contact," Marcus whispered into his radio. "Thunder's detecting something. Everyone stay alert." They moved cautiously through the rocky terrain. Thunder led them to a small ravine where they discovered something shocking, an enemy observation post with sophisticated electronic equipment. And in the center of the equipment sat a canine disruptor, already assembled and ready to activate. "Command, this is Stone," Marcus radioed back to base. "We've found an enemy position with a disruptor device. Requesting permission to engage." "Permission granted," Colonel Martinez's voice came back. "Neutralize the threat." The team moved with practiced precision. Within 5 minutes, they'd neutralized the enemy soldiers guarding the position and secured the disruptor device. But as they examined the equipment, Marcus made a chilling discovery. This unit was scheduled to activate in 6 hours. He told his team, reading the device's timer, "If we hadn't found it, every military working dog in this zone would have been hit with sonic weapons during tonight's patrol operations." They'd arrived just in time. Over the next 72 hours, Marcus coordinated simultaneous operations across all 3 combat zones. In Zone Bravo, Jake Henderson's team discovered that the enemy had hidden disruptor devices inside what looked like abandoned supply crates. Rocket's incredible nose detected the electronic components inside the crates, allowing Jake's team to locate and destroy 3 disruptors before they could be activated. "Good boy, Rocket," Jake praised his Belgian Malinois, who wagged his tail proudly. "You just saved a dozen dogs from getting hurt." In Zone Charlie, Lieutenant Chen's team faced a more difficult challenge. The enemy had already activated 1 disruptor device during a night patrol. 5 military working dogs were exposed before their handlers realized what was happening. But because Chen's team had already fitted those dogs with protective gear, the animals only experienced mild discomfort instead of the debilitating pain unprotected dogs would have suffered. The protection worked, Chen reported back to Marcus. The dogs were affected, but they recovered within minutes. Without the gear, they would have been completely incapacitated. Meanwhile, in Zone Alpha, Marcus's team was hunting the enemy's production facility, the place where the disruptor devices were being manufactured. Intelligence had narrowed the location to a 20-square-mile area in the mountains. But finding a hidden facility in that much rugged terrain would normally take weeks, unless you had 75 dogs with incredible tracking abilities. Marcus coordinated with Colonel Martinez to bring in additional K-9 units from surrounding areas. Within 2 days, they had assembled the largest operational military working dog force in the region, 38 dogs all working together to search the mountains. Thunder led one of the search teams, his nose working constantly as they covered mile after mile of rocky terrain. On the 3rd day of searching, a Labrador retriever named Scout, the same young dog Thunder had comforted during the Battle of Bunker 7, made the discovery. Scout started barking excitedly near what looked like a natural cave entrance. His handler, Private Michelle Torres, examined the area carefully. "Major Stone," she radioed. "Scouts found something. There's a cave here, but the entrance looks modified, like it's been reinforced with concrete but disguised to look natural." Marcus and Thunder arrived within minutes. As they approached the cave, Thunder's body language confirmed Scout's findings. This was important. "Good work, Scout," Marcus said, kneeling down to praise the young Labrador. You found it, buddy. You found what we've been looking for. The assault on the production facility was carefully coordinated. Colonel Martinez provided additional troops, but Marcus insisted that the K-9 units be integrated into every aspect of the operation. The dogs will detect booby traps, hidden enemies, and structural weaknesses better than any human or technology, he explained. They're not just support, they're tactical assets. As dawn broke on day 21, one day before the enemy's planned deployment, the assault began. The cave entrance opened into a massive underground facility. The enemy had excavated a natural cave system and expanded it into a sophisticated production center. Conveyor belts moved electronic components. Assembly stations were set up throughout the cavern. And in the center of it all, stacked on pallets, were approximately 150 K-9 disruptor units ready for deployment. But the facility wasn't abandoned. Enemy soldiers were stationed throughout, and they fought fiercely to protect their technology. The battle was intense. Thunder stayed at Marcus's side, alerting to enemy positions before human soldiers could detect them. Around the facility, other military working dogs provided the same service for their handlers, turning what would have been a chaotic firefight into a coordinated operation. Scout alerted to a hidden explosive device that would have collapsed an entire section of the cave. Max, Shadow, and Luna worked together to track enemy soldiers trying to flee through escape tunnels. Rocket's speed allowed him to chase down an enemy officer carrying critical intelligence documents. The dogs weren't just participating in the battle, they were winning it. Within 2 hours, the facility was secured. Enemy soldiers were captured or had fled. And most importantly, all 150 disruptor units were in the hands of friendly forces. Rig the facility for demolition, Marcus ordered. I want every piece of equipment, every blueprint, every component destroyed. This technology ends here. As engineers set up explosive charges throughout the facility, Marcus stood with Thunder at the cave entrance, looking out over the mountain landscape. We did it, boy, he said quietly. We actually did it. Thunder leaned against his leg, tired but content. But before they could celebrate, Marcus's radio crackled with an urgent message from Jake Henderson in Zone Bravo. Major, we've got a problem. The enemy just activated a disruptor device we didn't know about. It's a large-scale unit, much more powerful than the portable ones. Every dog in this entire zone is being affected. Marcus's blood ran cold. A large-scale unit? That wasn't in any of the intelligence reports. How are the dogs with protective gear holding up? He asked urgently. There was a pause. Then Jake's voice came back, strained and worried. Sir, the protection isn't enough. The device is too powerful. The dogs are in pain. They're panicking. We're gonna have to evacuate them or they'll be permanently injured. Marcus felt that familiar cold dread settle into his stomach. The same feeling he'd had at Bunker 7 when forced to choose between saving humans and saving dogs. But this time he had more resources, more options, more people who understood what these dogs meant. Hold position, Marcus ordered. Do not evacuate. I'm coming to you with reinforcements. Sir, we don't have time. Henderson, trust me. Just hold your position and keep those dogs calm. I'm bringing Thunder and every available K-9 unit to your location. We're not leaving anyone behind. Not this time. Not ever again. Marcus organized the fastest military airlift of working dogs in history. Within 90 minutes, he had 28 dogs, including Thunder, loaded onto transport helicopters and flying toward Zone Bravo. But as they flew, Marcus's mind raced. Jake had said the protective gear wasn't enough against the large-scale disruptor. So how could more dogs help? Then it hit him. At Bunker 7, the dogs had formed tight pack formations when exposed to the enemy's sonic weapon. The pack behavior had helped them resist the effects. What if that wasn't just instinct? What if dogs working together could somehow amplify the effectiveness of their protective gear? Marcus pulled out his secure phone and called Dr. Chun. I need you to answer a question fast. Is there any way that multiple dogs wearing protective gear, in close proximity, could create some kind of interference pattern that boosts the effectiveness of the protection? There was a pause as Dr. Chun processed the question. That's Actually not a crazy idea, Major. The protective gear uses active noise cancellation technology. In theory, if multiple units are close together, they might create overlapping cancellation fields that are more effective than individual units. But we've never tested it. We're about to, Marcus replied. When the helicopters landed in Zone Bravo, Marcus found Jake's team huddled in a defensive position. 15 dogs were grouped together, all showing signs of distress despite their protective gear. Their handlers looked desperate and helpless. The large-scale disruptor is on that ridge, Jake shouted over the sound of the helicopters, pointing to a hilltop about 800 yards away. We can't get close enough to destroy it without exposing ourselves completely. Marcus gathered all the dogs together, the 15 from Zone Bravo and the 28 he'd brought with him. 43 military working dogs total. Everyone, bring your dogs in close, he ordered. Form a tight circle. Pack formation, like they did at Bunker 7. The handlers obeyed, though some looked confused. The dogs, sensing something important was happening, pressed close together. Thunder positioned himself at the center of the group, and other dogs naturally arranged themselves around him in concentric circles. As the pack formation tightened, something remarkable happened. The dogs' signs of distress began to decrease. The whining stopped. Their body language became calmer. Several dogs who had been panting heavily started to relax. It's working, Jake breathed. Major, whatever you're doing, it's working. Marcus grabbed his radio. Dr. Chun, I need you on this channel. I think the overlapping protection fields are working, but we need to destroy that large-scale disruptor before the dogs tire out. I'm pulling up satellite imagery of your location now, Dr. Chun replied. The disruptor is on that ridge like Henderson reported. But Major, there's something else. According to thermal imaging, there are 3 more large-scale units hidden in the surrounding area. They haven't activated yet, but if they do, Marcus understood immediately. If 3 more large-scale disruptors activated, even the pack formation wouldn't be enough to protect the dogs. They needed to destroy all 4 units simultaneously, or the enemy would just activate the others. I need demolitions teams at all 4 locations at once, Marcus said. And I need them there in the next 10 minutes before the enemy realizes what we're doing. Sir, that's impossible. One of the nearby officers protested. We don't have enough personnel or time. Marcus looked down at Thunder, who gazed back up at him with complete trust. Then he looked at the 43 dogs all pressed together in their protective pack formation. And he made a decision that would either save everyone or doom them all. We use the dogs, Marcus said firmly. Marcus's plan was audacious and had never been tried before. He would split the 43 dogs into 4 teams of 10 dogs each, with 3 in reserve. Each team would be paired with a demolition specialist and handlers. The dogs would use their speed, agility, and incredible senses to navigate to each disruptor location, avoiding enemy patrols and detecting booby traps along the way. Once at each location, the demolition specialist would plant charges. Then all 4 teams would retreat to safe distance and detonate all 4 disruptors simultaneously. You're asking dogs to conduct a coordinated tactical assault, Colonel Martinez said when he heard the plan. He'd arrived in Zone Bravo to take command of the operation. That's never been done before. Neither was holding a defensive position with 75 dogs while refusing evacuation orders, Marcus replied. But we did it at Bunker 7. These dogs can do incredible things if we trust them. And if the plan fails? If the enemy detects them and activates the other disruptors? Marcus looked the colonel straight in the eye. Then I'll form a pack formation with every dog and stay with them until the end. But I don't believe it will come to that. These dogs are soldiers, Colonel. They're heroes. And it's time we started treating them like it. Colonel Martinez studied Marcus for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, Major. We'll do it your way. But if this works, you're writing the new field manual for K9 operations, because nothing like this has ever been attempted. The 4 teams were assembled quickly. Team Alpha, Thunder and 9 other dogs, led by Marcus, targeting Disruptor 1 on the western ridge. Team Bravo, Rocket and 9 dogs, led by Jake Henderson, targeting Disruptor 2 in the Northern Valley, Team Charlie. Max, Shadow, Luna, and 7 other dogs, led by Sergeant Rodriguez, targeting Disruptor 3 in the Eastern Forest, Team Delta. Scout and 9 dogs, led by Lieutenant Sarachan, targeting Disruptor 4 in the Southern Caves. Each team had a demolition specialist, additional handlers for the multiple dogs, and secure communications. Remember, Marcus told the team leaders before they deployed, "The dogs are your primary navigation. Trust their instincts. If they alert to danger, listen to them. They'll sense threats we can't detect." At 1,400 hours, all 4 teams deployed simultaneously. Marcus moved through the rocky terrain with Thunder leading the way. The German Shepherd's nose worked constantly, detecting enemy positions before human eyes could spot them. Behind them, 9 other dogs followed in perfect formation with their handlers. "Contact ahead," Marcus whispered into his radio as Thunder alerted. 3 enemy soldiers at coordinates marked. Team Alpha adjusted their route, bypassing the enemy patrol without being detected. Thunder had saved them from a potential firefight that would have alerted every enemy force in the area. As they approached the western ridge, Thunder suddenly stopped and sat down, the signal for explosives detected. Marcus signaled the team to halt. He moved forward carefully and spotted what Thunder had found: a pressure-sensitive mine hidden beneath loose rocks on the path. "Good boy," Marcus whispered, scratching behind Thunder's ears through the protective gear. "You just saved all our lives." They carefully bypassed the mine and continued toward Disruptor 1. Meanwhile, across the operational area, the other 3 teams were having similar experiences. Jake reported that Rocket had detected an enemy ambush before Team Bravo walked into it. Rodriguez radioed that Max, Shadow, and Luna had found a hidden entrance to the eastern forest that cut their travel time in half. And Lieutenant Chun reported that Scout had detected structural weaknesses in the southern caves that helped them navigate safely. The dogs weren't just participating in the mission, they were making it possible. At 1,445 hours, all 4 teams reached their targets within minutes of each other. "Team Alpha in position," Marcus reported. "Placing charges now." His demolition specialist, a wiry sergeant named Williams, quickly rigged the Western Ridge Disruptor with C4 explosives. Thunder and the other dogs maintained security, alerting to any approaching enemies. One by one, the other teams reported in. Team Bravo charges set. Team Charlie charges set. Team Delta charges set. "All teams pull back to safe distance," Marcus ordered. "Detonation in 60 seconds. Mark." The 4 teams retreated rapidly. The dogs moved with incredible speed and discipline, understanding that something important was happening and responding to their handlers' urgency. At 50 seconds, all teams were at safe distance. At 30 seconds, Marcus did a final radio check. "All teams confirm ready for detonation. Team Bravo ready. Team Charlie ready. Team Delta ready." Marcus looked down at Thunder, who sat calmly at his feet despite the tension. The German Shepherd had led them through enemy territory, detected threats, and helped complete a mission that no one thought possible. "You're the bravest dog I've ever known," Marcus said quietly. Thunder's tail wagged once. "All teams," Marcus said into his radio, "detonate on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." For explosions erupted simultaneously across Zone Bravo. The disruptor devices, and the enemy's ability to hurt military working dogs, were destroyed in a coordinated blast that lit up the landscape. "All targets destroyed." Jake's excited voice came over the radio. "We did it. We actually did it." Cheers erupted from all 4 teams. Handlers hugged their dogs. The dogs barked joyfully, sensing their handlers' happiness even if they didn't fully understand why. But Marcus knew. They'd done more than destroy enemy weapons. They'd proven something that would change military operations forever. They'd proven that military working dogs weren't just support animals. They were tactical soldiers capable of conducting complex, coordinated operations that saved human lives. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus coordinated cleanup operations across all 3 combat zones. Intelligence confirmed that all major canine disruptor facilities had been destroyed. Enemy production capacity was eliminated. And most importantly, every single military working dog in all 3 zones had been fitted with protective gear and their handlers trained in the new protocols. Operation Faithful Guardian was a complete success. But the impact went far beyond just this single operation. Within a week, General Crawford ordered the implementation of Operation Faithful Guardian protocols across the entire military. Every military working dog worldwide would receive protective gear. Every handler would be trained in the new tactics. And new regulations were put in place ensuring that dogs would never be left behind in evacuation situations. The military had officially recognized what Marcus had known all along. These animals were soldiers who deserved the same loyalty they gave so freely. 2 weeks after the final disruptor was destroyed, another ceremony was held. This time it was attended by even more high-ranking officials, including the Secretary of Defense. Marcus stood at attention as the secretary approached him. "Major Stone," the secretary began, "your actions during Operation Faithful Guardian have not only saved the lives of hundreds of military working dogs, but have fundamentally changed how this nation views and treats the animals who serve in uniform. On behalf of the President and the people of the United States, I present you with the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded for acts of valor in combat." The audience erupted in applause as the medal was placed around Marcus's neck. But Marcus barely noticed. His attention was on the 50 handlers and 50 dogs assembled before him, the team that had made everything possible. When the applause died down, Marcus stepped up to the microphone. "This medal doesn't belong to me alone," he said clearly. "It belongs to every handler who trusted their dog enough to follow them into danger. It belongs to every dog who put loyalty above fear, duty above safety. And most of all, it belongs to Thunder." He gestured to the German shepherd sitting at his feet. "Thunder taught me what real loyalty means. He showed me that the bond between a handler and their dog is more than just training or commands. It's a partnership built on trust, love, and absolute devotion. Thunder didn't refuse to leave that bunker because he was trained to guard it. He stayed because he believed I would come back for him. And that faith, that trust, is what saved not just 75 dogs at Bunker 7, but hundreds of dogs across 3 combat zones." Marcus knelt down and wrapped his arms around Thunder's neck. The German shepherd leaned into the embrace, his tail wagging contentedly. "Every military working dog deserves a handler who will fight for them the way they fight for us," Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Every one of these incredible animals deserves to know that when they serve, they won't be abandoned. That's what Operation Faithful Guardian means. That's what this medal represents." The audience stood and applauded, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. But the most touching moment came next. All 50 dogs, as if responding to some invisible signal, stood up together. And then, in perfect unison, they all barked once. A canine salute to their handlers, their mission, and the bond that had saved them all. Marcus Stone, now Lieutenant Colonel Stone, sat in his office at the Operation Faithful Guardian headquarters. On the wall behind him hung photographs from the various missions, Bunker 7, the 3 combat zones, the destruction of the disruptor facilities. But his favorite photograph was simpler. Just Marcus and Thunder, sitting together at sunrise after the Battle of Bunker 7, both exhausted but alive. Thunder, now officially retired from active service, slept peacefully in a dog bed in the corner of the office. At 8 years old, the German shepherd had earned his rest. But he still came to work with Marcus every day, providing companionship and occasional consultation when Marcus needed to understand dog behavior for the program. A knock on the door interrupted Marcus's thoughts. "Come in," he called. Jake Henderson entered, now promoted to captain, with Rocket at his side. The Belgian Malinois was still in active service and looked as energetic as ever. "Sir, I wanted to give you the latest numbers," Jake said, handing over a report. "Operation Faithful Guardian has now been implemented across 47 countries that use military working dogs. Over 3,000 dogs have been fitted with protective gear. And we've trained more than 5,000 handlers in the new protocols." Marcus read through the report, a smile growing on his face. 3,000 dogs. That's incredible. There's more, Jake continued. Remember Colonel Reeves? She's petitioning the government to create a new military branch specifically for canine operations. Dogs would have official rank, benefits, and protections just like human soldiers. Do you think it will pass? Marcus asked. After everything we've accomplished? After we proved that dogs can conduct tactical operations and save human lives in ways that no technology can match? I think it has a really good chance. Thunder stirred in his bed and walked over to Marcus, pressing his head against his handler's leg. Even in retirement, the German Shepherd's loyalty never wavered. Marcus reached down to scratch behind Thunder's ears. You know what the best part of all this is? What's that, sir? Every single dog from Bunker 7, all 75 of them, they're all still alive. Everyone found a home, either with their handlers or with families who understand how special they are. Not one was left behind. Not one was forgotten. Jake smiled. That's because of you, sir. You showed us what was possible. No, Marcus corrected gently. Thunder showed us. I just followed his lead. There was a comfortable silence as both men looked at their canine partners. Thunder resting peacefully, Rocket sitting alertly, both dogs representing the thousands of military working dogs serving around the world. You know, Jake said thoughtfully, when I first signed up to be a handler, I thought it was just about having a dog that could help me do my job better. I didn't understand that I wasn't getting a tool. I was getting a partner, a friend, family. Most people don't understand that until they experience it, Marcus replied. But now, thanks to Operation Faithful Guardian, every handler gets trained to understand that bond from day one. No more dogs treated as expendable equipment. No more impossible choices between saving humans and saving animals. We save both because we're all on the same team. Another knock on the door interrupted them. This time it was Lieutenant Sarah Chun with a young private Marcus didn't recognize. Sir, Chun said, I'd like you to meet Private David Morrison. He just graduated from handler school, and I thought you'd like to meet his dog. The private stepped forward with a young German Shepherd puppy, maybe 6 months old, at his side. The puppy looked almost identical to how Thunder must have looked years ago. Sir, Private Morrison said nervously, they told us in training about what happened at Bunker 7, about how you stayed with the dogs when everyone else evacuated, about Thunder refusing to leave his post. That story. It's why I wanted to become a handler. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. What's your dog's name, Private? Lightning, sir. I named him after Thunder, hoping he'd be even half as brave and loyal as your dog. Thunder, hearing his name, walked over to investigate the puppy. Lightning's tail wagged excitedly as the older dog sniffed him carefully. Then Thunder did something remarkable. He touched noses with Lightning in the traditional dog greeting, as if passing on wisdom from one generation to the next. I think Thunder approves, Marcus said with a smile. Take care of Lightning, Private. Train him well. Trust him completely. And never forget that he's not just your dog. He's your partner. Yes, sir. I won't forget. As Private Morrison left with Lightning, Marcus turned back to look at the photographs on his wall. So many missions. So many dogs saved. So many lives changed. Sir, Jake asked quietly, do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd made a different choice at Bunker 7? If you'd followed protocol and evacuated without the dogs? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked down at Thunder, who gazed back up at him with those wise, trusting eyes. Every day, Marcus admitted, I think about how close I came to leaving him behind. How close I came to abandoning 75 loyal soldiers who trusted me completely. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that I made the choice I did. He knelt down and hugged Thunder close. Because this bond, this partnership, this loyalty, it's worth everything. These dogs give us their whole hearts, their complete trust, their absolute devotion. And the least we can do is give them the same in return. Thunder licked Marcus's face once, then rested his head on his handler's shoulder, a gesture of love and contentment. Outside the office window, the sun was setting over the training facility. New handlers worked with new dogs, learning the protocols that Operation Faithful Guardian had established. building bonds that would last a lifetime, creating partnerships that would save lives. And somewhere out there, in combat zones around the world, military working dogs were serving alongside their handlers, protected, valued, and never alone. Because one Navy SEAL had refused to leave his dog behind. Because 75 military dogs had chosen duty over survival. Because loyalty, in the end, proved stronger than any weapon, any order, any protocol. The story of Bunker 7 would be told for generations. A reminder that the strongest bonds aren't formed through training or commands, but through trust, love, and the unshakable belief that we never leave our partners behind. Not now. Not ever. 5 years after the events at Bunker 7, the military landscape had changed dramatically. Military working dogs now held official ranks and were entitled to the same protections and benefits as human soldiers. A dog could not be retired without handler consent. Emergency evacuation protocols required equal consideration for both human and canine personnel. And most importantly, leaving a military working dog behind in combat situations was now officially classified as abandoning a soldier, a serious military offense. Thunder lived out his retirement in comfort and happiness, spending his days at Marcus's side and his evenings playing with Marcus's 2 young children, who adored their father's retired partner. On Thunder's 10th birthday, Marcus organized a reunion of all the dogs from Bunker 7 and their handlers. 75 dogs, some retired, some still serving, gathered together one more time. It was an incredible sight. Dozens of military working dogs playing together, greeting old friends, while their handlers shared stories and memories. That evening, as the sun set and the reunion wound down, Marcus stood with Thunder looking out over the field of dogs and handlers. "You know what you started here, buddy?" Marcus said quietly. "You changed the world. You showed everyone what dogs are really capable of. And because of you, thousands of dogs are being treated with the respect and loyalty they deserve." Thunder, gray around the muzzle now but still alert and dignified, leaned against his partner one last time. And in that moment, Marcus understood the true meaning of Operation Faithful Guardian. It wasn't about weapons or missions or tactical advantages. It was about love. It was about loyalty. It was about never leaving family behind. And it was about 75 military dogs who refused to abandon their post, and one Navy SEAL who refused to abandon them. Because that's what family does. That's what soldiers do. That's what loyalty really means. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. We bring you amazing true stories of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Your subscription helps us continue creating content that celebrates these incredible relationships. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next story. The end.